Hello, it's Monday, June 12th, 2017. You are listening to Inception Radio Network, voice of the fringe majority. This is Carol Carl with ufo-headline-news. How about a little Big Dipper viewing in the sky tonight? Well, you can do that. Deborah Bird from earthsky.org offers tonight, assuming you're in the Northern Hemisphere, you can find the legendary Big Dipper asterism. It says here that you gentle listeners across the pond call it the Plough. It's a familiar star pattern high in the north during the evening hours in the month of June. Although the Big Dipper can also be seen from the southern tropics at nightfall, it's going to reside much lower in the northern sky, closer to the horizon. Polaris, that North Star, disappears beneath the horizon once you get south of the Earth's equator. You can find the Big Dipper pretty easily because, unlike the shapes one sees in a lot of asterisms and constellations, in this case, the Big Dipper really resembles a dipper. Less familiar, tougher to find is that Little Dipper. And here's how you can find that from the northerly latitudes. Locate the Big Dipper in the northern sky during the evening hours. Notice the Big Dipper has two parts, a bowl and a handle. See the two outer stars in that bowl? Those stars are called the pointers because they point to the North Star, also known as Polaris. Once you've found Polaris, you can find the Little Dipper. Polaris marks the end of the handle of that Little Dipper. And as this article notes, you're going to need a dark sky to see that Little Dipper in full because it's so much fainter than its larger, brighter counterpart. And so the bottom line here, look for the Big Dipper high in the north at nightfall. Something else very high in the sky, it's a moon for the third largest dwarf planet. This is also from earthsky.com. Deborah Bird writes this for their science division. So many moons. With the discovery of a moon for 2007 OR10, it seems evident that most known dwarf planets in the Kuiper Belt, larger than 600 miles across, are known now to have companions. Astronomers have found a moon for the Kuiper Belt object known as 2007 OR10. This object is one of several of the uncounted icy bodies in that region of space beyond the outermost major planet, Neptune, that's been categorized as a dwarf planet. That's because it's relatively big, the third biggest dwarf planet known after Pluto and Eris. The new moon's discovery means that most of the known dwarf planets in the Kuiper Belt, larger than 600 miles or 1,000 kilometers across, do have companions. Astronomers are using this discovery as a springboard for contemplating what must have been happening billions of years ago when our sun and its planets were young. They're thinking about how collisions between solar system bodies, which often create craters like those we see on Earth's moon, can also create binary objects, that is, planets or dwarf planets or even asteroids with moons. The team's results appear in a new peer-reviewed Express journal that lets authors publish on a shorter-than-usual time frame. It's in the Astrophysical Journal Letters. Observation taken of 2007 OR10 by the famous planet-hunting Kepler Space Telescope first tipped off the astronomers of the possibility of a moon circling it. Kepler had revealed an unusually slow rotation period, 45 hours, for 2007 OR10. Enter an individual named Csaba Kiss. That's spelled C-S-A-B-A-K-I-S-S. Kiss is of the Konkoly Observatory in Budapest, Hungary, lead author of the paper announcing the moon's discovery. Here's the quote. Typical rotation periods for Kuiper Belt objects are under 24 hours. The slower rotation period could have been caused by the gravitational tug of a moon. End quotes. So the astronomers then searched for that moon in the Hubble Space Telescope's archival images. They were looking for 2007 OR10, and that's when they spotted it. In two separate Hubble observations spaced a year apart, the images show that the moon is gravitationally bound to 2007 OR10 because it moves with the dwarf planet as seen against a background of stars. Later, the astronomers calculated the diameters of both 2007 OR10 and its moon based on observations in far infrared light, and they used the Herschel Space Observatory for that. The dwarf planet is about 950 miles, 1,500 kilometers across, And the moon is estimated to be 150 miles to 250 miles, that's up to about 400 kilometers, in diameter. Earth, in contrast, is about 8,000 miles or 13,000 miles across. We did not know that. And yikes. So here is ye old bottom line. With the discovery of a moon for 2007 OR10, most known dwarf planets in the Kuiper Belt, larger than 600 miles across, now are known to have companions. Companions to ease that loneliness of space. How about we make that the littered loneliness of space? That'll segue right into this next headline. If we don't act soon, space junk might trap us on Earth. The tiny pieces of junk orbiting the Earth could have a major impact on space exploration. Oh, we think there's a pun embedded in that second headline. But this gets a byline for Sophie Weiner, PopularMechanics.com, Space Division. Not everything we send into space comes back down. In fact, there are millions of pieces of junk, ranging from tiny flecks of paint to entire satellites currently taking up space around the Earth's atmosphere. As of now, space agencies are already tracking 750,000 pieces of space debris orbiting the Earth. This space pollution is a major problem because of how fast objects orbiting Earth travel. Even a paint fleck a few millimeters long can cause serious damage when it hits something. The more that this space junk proliferates, the harder and harder it will be to send anything up into space. We could literally trap ourselves on Earth if we're not careful. Luckily, scientists are working on ways to prevent this. There's a NASA program called Space Debris Elimination. That program proposes shooting atmospheric gases into space to destabilize the debris' orbit and send it plummeting back to Earth where it will burn up in our atmosphere. Another proposal from the European Space Agency tackles the larger pieces of debris, the old satellites. Their idea is to send a machine into space called the E-D orbit, which would literally shoot a net at old satellites and drag them back into the atmosphere using a small rocket. Neither of these solutions would address the millions of tiny bits of trash floating around the Earth, so the best idea for now is to prevent more from building up. If not, according to this article by Sophie Weiner, we could find ourselves trapped in a prison of our own making. And in other space news, we grabbed an article from MarketWatch. Byline for Jurika Dujmovic, mining this asteroid between Mars and Jupiter could net, 10,000 quadrillion dollars. Well, Jurika describes that as 10,000 with 15 zeros after it. Scientists are interested in the metallic composition of the 16 Psyche asteroid. And of course, that's like Psyche, the goddess Psyche, Psyche. NASA said this asteroid is made of rock, metals, and other elements. A common element, of course, in science fiction films is asteroids. You're either blowing them up, landing on them, living inside them, or mining them for profit. That last cliche might actually become reality in the near future, thanks to one of the latest NASA missions, which is to research 16 Psyche, that asteroid orbiting the Sun between Mars and Jupiter. This asteroid has a diameter of about 135 miles, and it's mostly comprised of precious metals, which makes it a veritable treasure trove. If all of its metals, nickel, iron, platinum, iridium, and rhenium, that's spelled R-H-E-N-I-U-M, could somehow be extracted and sold on Earth, they would fetch a price of 10,000 quadrillion. Oh, how much is that? Well, add 15 zeros to 10,000 and you're there. Unfortunately, bringing all that bling to Earth is out of the question. First, we still don't have the technology that would enable us to haul that mass and land it safely on Earth. The very mining of the asteroid and then the transporting of it in chunks might also prove problematic, since we haven't invented space mines yet. Finally, even if we found a way to haul it all back to Earth, the sudden rise in supply on the market would cause prices to plummet, which would severely affect the bottom line of the space miners and put the long-term profitability of the entire operation into question. And that's why NASA isn't really considering profits as a main motivation for this mission. Scientists are nevertheless interested in the metallic composition of 16 Psyche, because its structure closely resembles the one found within planetary nuclei. 16 Psyche might actually be a metallic core of a planet twice its diameter that, for some reason, just didn't finish its formation. Another curiosity here is the presence of water, the most likely source of which may be frequent collisions with smaller asteroids containing hydrogen, carbon, or ice. The proposed research would be conducted by using a robotic vehicle dubbed Psyche Orbiter. The spacecraft would orbit the asteroid for 6 months, study its topography, gravity, magnetism, and other features. This research is invaluable. Much of what we know about our own planet's metallic core, which is unreachable below rocky mantles and crust, that's still mainly theoretical. By studying 16 Psyche, which actually could be an exposed planetary core, scientists would gain an unprecedented insight into complex processes associated with the formation of terrestrial planets. This mission is scheduled to launch in 2022, and the arrival at 16 Psyche is expected in 4.6 years, or 2026. The entire observation period should last 20 months and will include orbiting, mapping, and studying the asteroid's properties. Just another example of science fiction becoming science fact. Here's just a snippet of an article from the Northern Territory News. Headline: Northern Territory in dry spell for UFO sightings. Judith Aisthorpe wrote this. Australia's self-proclaimed UFO capital, Wycliffe Well, hasn't had a single extraterrestrial visitor in a year. With what's called the dry season, uppercase D, uppercase S in Australia, historically the prime time for UFO sightings in the Northern Territory, upon them, the lack of extraterrestrial visitors is concerning. Only 3 UFO encounters have been brought to the attention of the Northern Territory News in the past year, the most recent being MLA Jerry Wood's encounter in February. Mr. Wood said as dawn broke, he saw a white light about the brightness of a star. It was heading north from Virginia towards Howard Springs in Australia. According to Wycliffe Well Holiday Park manager Karthik Mayana, in the year he'd worked there, not one extraterrestrial visitor had shown themselves to him or any of the park's residents. Australian UFO Research Association spokesman Doug Moffat said in the past 6 months there had been an increase in reported sightings across the world, but Doug Moffat couldn't explain why the territory was lacking in reports of UFOs. He suggests people are seeing UFOs, but simply not reporting them. Quote, once you get out into the Northern Territory, the western parts of the country areas, you get a much higher percentage of close encounters, end quotes, he said. On the Sydney, Australia-based group's website, only one territory encounter in Katherine last year in July has been listed. Doug Moffat believes we're currently in the initial stages for first contact of extraterrestrials. He links that to the global increase in sightings. He says, quote, if we see a spike in the next 6 or 12 months in close encounter sightings, I think that is the lead up to first contact. I'm not getting too excited because we're only at phase 1, which is the increase of sightings, end quotes. Paradoxical, a decrease in the reported sightings and yet a worldwide increase. Acacia Hills UFO hunter Alan Ferguson closed down his legendary website, which was ufoterritory.com.au. He closed it down last year, citing a, quote, mindset change, end quotes. Alan Ferguson said on Twitter he was still involved, but, quote, behind the scenes, end quotes. There's a local astronomer, Jeff Carr. He doesn't believe in aliens, but he cannot say for certain that they don't exist. He said many of the sightings could be put down to aircraft, drones, or weather-related. We'll keep our eyes on the land down under. So, gentle listeners, we're in that relative geolocation. Let's head on over to New South Wales, where there was a UFO sighting in Crescent Head. MoveOn-wise, this has a case number 84303. This took place on the 4th of June, 2017, was reported on the 10th of June. Here's what our witness offers by way of summary. 6 white lights on object, which then spun, flashed red, green, moved slightly. Sighting specifics give us a viewing distance 101 to 500 feet. The altitude was over 500 feet, and there was cloud cover. The sighting duration, 3 hours. The object features are reported as being a dome. The flight path, hovering, then path, and then a path with directional change. And this object was shaped like a sphere. There's no mention of meteorology. Let's just jump right into the sighting. Camping at Point Plomer, that's spelled Plomer, looked out of the roof of the tent, it had a sky roof, at 4 a.m., and I saw a bright star-like object which was moving occasionally within a defined area. And then smaller star-like objects started to come out of this bright object and fly away quickly in different directions. I also saw at least 5 shooting stars at this time, one of which moved in an arc. I sat up after watching this for 30 minutes and saw a large, bright object about 400 meters from our tent. It was hovering. It was about 50 meters above the sand to the northeast, and then it began to come closer. It then changed from one bright light to 6 smaller lights. For example, the lights changed. If it had been a car, it was as if the car went from high beams to parking lights. And then they moved away. Over 2 hours, it moved away slowly. It stayed there until sunrise. It was there until the sun was so bright we could no longer see it. Up in the night sky, I saw 20+ of these objects, some of which flashed red, and some would disappear and reappear. Some of these things zoomed off at incredible speeds. Since then, we continue to see the bright hovering lights up in the East Coast for the past week. This is a different sighting. I noticed it first by the bright light moving, then other lights emerging from it. These lights flashed red and large. They were spinning. These could not be explained. They were too large, too fast to be a drone, and there was no noise. In both occasions, I did not have a feeling of being threatened, more that these things were just there to observe. Also, this object didn't seem to be bothered by being found. It was so prominent, and it did not appear to leave quickly. Let's quickly shift our trajectory to California in the United States, to the city of Mariposa, or Mariposa. It's butterfly in Spanish, no matter how you say it. This is case number 84260 from the MUFON database. In summary, looked like dumbbell. Both ends bright red, the connector black, moved in sky for several minutes. Sighting specifics give a viewing distance of over 1 mile. The altitude was over 500 feet without cloud cover. The duration of this sighting was 10 minutes. The object features, though, just get described vaguely as other. Object flight path was path with directional change, path, then hovering. And this object was shaped like a dumbbell, also called a barbell, not one of the most common sighting shapes reported. The maximum temperature over Mariposa, California, was 88 degrees Fahrenheit, 31 degrees Celsius, down to a mean, chilly for California, 55 degrees Fahrenheit, 13 degrees Celsius. The maximum, mean, and minimum visibility factors all stood the same, 10 miles, 16 kilometers. There seemed to be nothing abnormal about the weather. Here's the account. Sitting outside to have a smoke, I usually go out 2 to 3 times each evening to look at the night sky. I saw this object moving from west to northwest. It was large in the sky. It looked like a large dumbbell with both ends bright red. It was kind of pulsing. It had a black connector between those 2 ends, and that was pitch black. First saw this in the west, moving from left to right, and then I went into the house and got my wife to come out. She took one look and said, "So what? A big red thingy flying around in the sky?" She went back into the house. I watched for about 2 minutes more as it moved up and down, left and right, and then it just took off very fast, much faster than any jet. It made not a sound. It headed northwest, disappearing over the mountains. This thing was traveling so fast it appeared to go right through the mountain. I see many strange things in the night sky up here, mostly things that look like a camera flash in the upper atmosphere. I see them quite often. Sometimes there'll be just one. but oftentimes there'll be several. They're always a white, bright flash. Gotta look quick. One night I saw 4 of them, and then a 5th, although that 5th one was only red. The only time I ever saw a red one, it appeared to be an energy burst just outside our atmosphere. This definitely was not a plane or helicopter. It was way too high up. Could this have been a ship entering or leaving hyperspace? Interesting. Yes, it was a confirmed sighting by another set of eyes, another brain, but a brain that doesn't quite see the connection to a big red thingy flying around in the sky being unusual. Oh well, give her time. We're still in the Golden State of California, so let's pick up this sighting from Studio City, California. It's MUFON case number 84281. The date of this sighting is the 9th of June. It got a same-day report, and that's 2017. In summary, me and others witnessed many UFOs above us, orbs. Sighting specifics give us an unknown viewing distance, an unknown altitude. A sighting duration, however, that's 30 minutes. The object features other and unknown. This flight path was stationary, hovering, and then path, and this particular object seemed to be shaped like a circle. There isn't any meteorology. It's usually sunny in California. But here's the account, first person, unedited. Just witnessed, along with 3 of my neighbors, over 20 white orb-like UFOs, perhaps about 20,000 feet up, over the Moore Park Street address, Studio City, California, near Coldwater Canyon. These things were all hovering, floating, and on 7 occasions, one would travel and touch another, all in the exact way, and they repeated this. I was the first who noticed them. It was about 4:45 p.m. I was watching a large aircraft fly overhead, and then I noticed 2 of them near it. Then I saw the others. Several neighbors saw me, and then they looked up and also stared. We all wondered what these things were. Many were in clusters close to each other, separated from the other clusters. And for the 30 minutes we watched them, they barely moved. I also reported this to the Facebook MUFON. I had no feelings at the time emotionally, just a sense of wonder. They all reminded me of the fleet reportings in Mexico. These things were too high up for a picture to even make anything out. I asked a neighbor to try with her iPhone, but they could barely be seen through the phone. After 30 minutes of watching them, they were drifting east. They were not balloons, as 7 of them traveled to each other on separate occasions. They were touching each other in the same exact manner, same exact pattern, exact same touch, 7 different times. And there were over 20 of these things. To which we can only say, what the heck? We just can't leave the state of California. Here's a sighting from the northern part of the state, city of Bakersfield. MUFON gave this case number 84331 for those tracking and identification processes. The date of the sighting is the 10th of June, 2017. It got a next-day report. Those sighting specifics offer a viewing distance of 101 feet to 500 feet, the altitude 500 feet or less, and then over 500 feet and underneath a cloud cover. The sighting duration was 7 minutes. Object features, dome. Object flight path, hovering, then path, then hovering. And this object is described as looking like a fireball as far as the shape is concerned. There is some weather. The maximum temperature was 79 degrees Fahrenheit, 26 degrees Celsius. Minimum temperature 61 degrees Fahrenheit, 16 degrees Celsius. Those visibility factors, all 3 of them, maximum, mean, and minimum, the same, 10 miles, 16 kilometers. And California very rarely has abnormal weather. There wasn't any at the time of this sighting. It seemed to go something like this. My fiancé and I were in our backyard observing numerous fireball-like UFOs. These things were slowly moving across the sky, fairly close. They were above our neighbors' houses. I told her to run and grab the phone and record this, as this is the second event we've witnessed in the last few months, and we failed to capture it the first time. Our thoughts initially were these could be some new kind of memorial balloons, something that we weren't aware of. They moved across the sky similar to hot air balloons, but they seemed to be made entirely of fire. The first time we saw one of these was a few months ago. We saw it up very close. It rose directly over our neighbor's house. I would describe this as a large sack of fire being carried by some type of curved black claw-type structure directly above it. And yet another kind of description, a sack of fire and a black claw-type object. On that note, we've got to say, that's a wrap. Thank you for listening to Inception Radio Network. Follow today's broadcast at ufo-headline-news.com and look for us on YouTube as well. Take care of each other. We're all in this together. This is Carol Carl. See you tomorrow.